Okay, is any more comments before we go into the class then? We'll start with Rule 7. Well, we started Rule 7 last week, but we just got a little bit into it. Let me read it over to you again. The dual forces on the plane whereon the vital power must be sought are seen. Two paths face the solar angel. The poles vibrate. A choice confronts the one who meditates. Does that turn on any light in anybody's head?
The ones who meditate, it does.
Yeah. Who's the one that meditates?
Our soul and our soul's reflection meditate.
Yeah, it's actually both of us, but mainly until this rule doesn't really apply until we get the attention of the soul. And then the soul says, oh, it looks like my reflection is ready for some interplay. So the soul begins to meditate, and you meditate at the same time, and you link with the soul, and you pay attention. And so it's really you and the soul together.
Well, we're not to have the idea that the soul is somebody else. I am the soul.
Yeah, that's right. And the way I always look at that is when you're dreaming, you're still you, but you're not all of you there. When we're incarnate, we're still the soul, but not all the soul is here with us. Just a portion of it is here. And so after we die and return to the soul, it's like an awakening where we understand what our true self is.
Well, the soul is the light body of the monad.
Yeah. Soul is the extension of the monad, and we are extension of the soul. So, okay, now let's go over this rule. There's 5 different things, and it's amazing how many things DK condenses in just a few words. First of all, it says, talks about the plane whereon the vital power must be sought or seen. What plane is it where the dual forces play out?
The astral plane.
That's right, the astral plane. We got one guy here that's probably read this chapter over. Good for you, Edward.
I try to read them twice.
Okay. So we got the plane that's talking about is the astral plane. And on this astral plane, he says there's 5 different ingredients talked about in this rule. On the plane, it's called the plane of dual forces, the plane of the 2 paths, the plane whereon the vital power is sought, the plane of vibrating poles, the plane whereon the choice is made. He says a disciple must learn both to stand free from it and then to work on it. In this instruction, he says, I give some clear teaching on this plane. For the moment a man can see on the astral plane and can achieve equilibrium and hold steady in the midst of its vibrating forces, that moment he is ready for initiation. What do you think it means to see on the astral plane? First of all, let's talk about what the astral plane is. Okay, Edward, you've had, we'll let somebody else answer this one, because I know you know the answer to it. What is the astral plane? Okay, guys, don't all speak at once.
Is it the emotional body?
Else wants to.
That's right, the emotional self. What creates it? What creates the astral plane?
Sentiency.
Desire.
Now, the Tibetan says the astral plane is really an illusion. He says, in reality, from a higher perspective, it doesn't even exist. And so it's, but for us, it's really permeates us to a great degree, and it has a tremendous influence on us. So it's something that is a big item for us to deal with for something from a higher plane doesn't even exist. But what makes it exist for us, at least seem to exist? I'll let Edward answer this if he can figure that out, or anybody
It's a
that
product
wants.
of our desires.
What'd you say?
It's a product of our desires and all of our sentient sensing mechanisms.
Okay. Product of our desires. That's how you're halfway there. Any other comment? What actually made it materialize?
Oh, I know. I think the interplay between the etheric and the mind.
Oh, that's great. Perfect. That's exactly right. I didn't expect anybody to get that, Joshua. But yeah, right. This is what DK says. There's an interplay between not the physical body, but the etheric body and the mind. And that interplay says when desire came in, when man began to have desire for things, it created an interplay between the mind and the energy of the etheric body, and it created an illusion that projected our desires. And why is everything in the astral plane so upside down for everybody then? Why does it distort so much stuff?
The higher mind doesn't seem to be in control for most people.
Right. Desire enters in, brings in the power of the higher mind, the power of the etheric body, and that creates an interplay that is distorted by what people want to be true rather than what is true. That's why we really see this in politics. Both sides are against each other because of what they want to be true rather than what is true. Often in politics, especially today, I mean, we have a political division that's just going crazy right now, and it's because of what people want to be true rather than what is true. And it creates even stronger thought forms on the astral plane. Now, this interplay, which is we could call the fuel of this interplay, like the jet fuel that creates this interplay of mind and etheric force, desire, and it creates these thought forms. And the more the desire is fed in, the stronger are the thought forms. And these thought forms create an image of what God is supposed to be according to what people desire it to be. And same thing of Jesus, the saints. People see visions of God, angels, Jesus, and they often see thought forms based on what people desire them to be rather than what they really are. And so these thought forms are powerful. They create religions, they create political movements, and they create all kinds of problems. Wherever you see major divisions on the earth, whether it be politics, religion, or whatever, you're seeing the outcome of the astral forces where illusion dominates. Where you see disagreement, you're seeing illusion somewhere. Maybe a handful of people are seeing some things that are true, but you're seeing a lot of illusion mixed in. And because people can't see it their way, they're willing to go to war, either on some level, sometimes descending into the physical. So what does it mean to see on the astral plane? There's two kinds of seeing on the astral plane. What are the two kinds?
Well, some people have etheric vision, which they see on the astral plane.
Right. Some people actually can see images, and in meditation they can see different things from the astral plane. And but that's one type of vision. Now there's another vision that's more important.
That's
what vision would that be?
The intuitive vision.
Right. Right. It comes from the intuition, but it's a vision where the astral plane is seen for what it is. In other words, if somebody comes to you and says, I have this hot business scheme that's going to make $1 million in a couple months, you can figure the guy's got some astral deception going on there. But the vision that you want to be able to see where the deception is, where the reality is, so you don't waste a bunch of money investing in this impractical scheme. That's just one thing. Now, same thing with the religion. Somebody will say, I met this guru who's predicting the end of the world, and boy, you need to get on board. The type of vision you want is the vision that sees this guy for what he really is, and to see where this information is actually coming from. This is the most important of the astral vision, because you can see visions and things created from the astral world, and they may be completely wrong. How many times have you heard people claim to see Jesus and got information, then they made a prediction, and then the prediction didn't come true? That's one of the concrete signs we can go by. If people make a bunch of predictions that claim to be from God or Jesus or whatever, and they don't come true, then there's some astral distortion involved. But we shouldn't have to wait that long. We should be able to listen to somebody talk, use the intuition, use your truth detector that's inside of you to discern the true astral nature of what you're seeing. So if we can see, the key to overcoming the astral world and dominating it is seeing correctly. He says this astral plane is a meeting ground of forces where reality is turned upside down, and any vision is mixed and foggy. Discrimination and analysis by mind is necessary to control the astral body. Now, he uses the word discrimination quite a bit. Today, that word has been demonized, so anyone that discriminates is evil by today's politically correct. It's been so demonized that I usually use the word discernment instead, because that's still an acceptable word. But he uses discrimination not in the sense that we should push different races aside or think of them as being lower, not in a racial sense, but when he talks about a discriminating mind, he's talking about a mind that can discern the real from the unreal. And back when he wrote this was not a negative word. So we need to use discernment to discriminate between the real and the unreal, and then analyze, he says. So now if we are in touch with the intuition, that's even better. But if you feel you're not intuitive enough to figure it out, then use the mind to discern and analyze the situation, and you can often figure out whether or not what you're hearing is based on astral distortion, and you'll be able to figure out where that distortion is. And if you're really on top of things, you'll be able to see where the real truth lies. And this is what is really lacking in the world today, seeing where the real truth lies. He says, the astral plane is a plane of illusion, of glamour, and distorted presentation of reality. Plus, it contains Akashic records, which concern the emotional history of the past. Okay, who knows what the Akashic records are? Okay, somebody else besides Edward today.
Well, my understanding is it's basically a record of everything that's ever happened that people can access astrally.
Okay, Now, if they're on the astral plane, then is it possible to get the truth from them?
Well, it's possible they're distorted if that's where you're seeing them.
Yeah. But are they on the astral plane? He makes it sound here like they're on the astral plane, but is that where they are?
I mean, this is my understanding / my guess, but my guess would be that people often access them via the astral plane, but maybe they ultimately exist someplace else where they're a bit
Okay, you're right. Very good guess. That's exactly right. The Akashic records do not originate on the astral plane, but on the mental plane, and they're accurate there. But they're reflected down to the astral plane. And on the astral plane, he says they contain the emotional history of the past. Okay, so when you tune in to the emotional history, are you going to get it accurately?
Not quite.
No, you'll tune in, you'll get how people feel the history was. Now look at the history we're going through right now. Okay, if you tune into the emotional history of Donald Trump supporters, are you going to get a different read than if you tune into the history of the Democrats?
No, it looked pretty different.
And the Trump haters. Yeah. So you're going to, if both of the emotional histories are being recorded there in the astral plane right now. Now on the higher planes, it's being recorded accurately. But then it's reflected down to the astral plane, because this is where people begin to tune into before they reach the higher. So they always tune into the lower first before they can tune into the higher. And so say 100 years from now, a person just kind of getting his feet wet with the Akashic records will tune in to Donald Trump, and they'll either figure he's the most reprobate guy they've ever come across, or he's almost a messiah figure. So they'll get either one impression or the other, because they'll read according to their own emotional standing. So, and where their emotions lie. So, Donald Trump, for instance, is a really good example of the test of future psychics to see how accurate they can be. And what is the real truth behind him? We won't even go there, because we don't want to have a big diversion here. Okay. On the astral plane, he says, or is also where glamours are created. So what is a glamour, and what's the difference between an illusion and a glamour? Let's pick on somebody that isn't normally answering. Let me see here. Well, Melba, what's the difference? What's a glamour?
I don't know how to answer. I'll just be honest. One of the things that popped in my mind is that it's a glamour is some kind of a belief, but illusions are beliefs too. So
Yeah.
people believe in their illusions. So I'm sorry.
Well, you're on the right track. So let's pick on a Soft. Soft, can you tell us what a glamour is?
Just a second. I was busy doing something.
You're supposed to be paying attention, Soft.
I am paying attention.
You want your gold star.
I am paying attention.
Wait, are we getting stars?
Maybe.
I'm just hanging. I have the wet laundry.
Can you turn your volume up a little bit? Can hardly hear you.
Okay. Is it better now? Is it better now?
No.
Not very good. Well,
Oh.
can you tell us what a glamour is? We'll listen carefully.
Okay. Glamour is what you think about yourself, but it's not true. It's an illusion. The way you think about yourself, like you are something very, very special, very, very unique, very important and special, and you, through the emotions that you think about yourself.
Yeah. Okay, I think you answered it right, but I could just barely hear you. A glamour is yeah, connected to the emotion, like you said, but it's mainly something that's amplified by the ego. Okay. Now, what's the difference between a glamour and an illusion? What's an illusion? Is the illusion connected to the ego, or is that something else? Lorraine, we'll let you answer this one. What do you think the difference between an illusion and glamour is?
I don't know. I think one of them is deeper than the other one. One of them is more ingrained.
Right. Which one do you think we overcome first, glamour or illusion?
I think it'd be easier to overcome glamour.
Okay,
It's easier to go.
we overcome glamour first, but it's not necessarily easier, but it's the one that we tackle first because it's in our face, so to speak. So you tackle the thing that's really bothering you, but it's overcoming glamours is a big hurdle. Okay, well, I'll explain in a nutshell the difference. The glamour is a distortion. Some people use the word illusion connected. There's illusion in there, but it's more distortion than illusion. It's distorted. It takes something that's actually happened, that's true out there. It distorts it, and then it applies it to yourself so that your ego is amplified after you're submerged yourself in some type of teaching or thinking. Now, an illusion often is not connected with ego at all. A person can have an illusion and be completely pure in heart and pure intent, but deceived because his mind, he doesn't have all the pieces to the puzzle together. So if you have a puzzle and you're trying to figure out what the picture is like, but only half the pieces are there, and you make a guess and the guess is wrong, you can be completely sincere and you can think you have the right answer. Maybe you're pretty sure how the puzzles of what the picture is really going to be, but you can be completely wrong because it's an illusion. It's not connected to the ego. Whereas the person with the ego will attach himself to the answer in a way that satisfies his desires. The person in illusion isn't so much influenced by desire as he just sincerely thinks this is the answer. And so the first thing to overcome is the astral, where we have that distortion going on, and where that distortion is amplified because of lack of our purity of intention and our focus too much on the ego. And what the ego does, it amplifies our importance. And so this amplification of our importance surfaces in many different glamours. Can anyone name a glamour or two for me?
JJ, it would help me to understand if you can put it into context. So let's say a woman is raped. Does she get a glamour about the world in general? She doesn't trust it. She is afraid of the world. Is that a glamour or an illusion?
Well, it's really there's always some illusion involved because of pain and things like this. But no, that wouldn't necessarily produce a glamour. However, it could. Let's say here's a glamour that could be associated with that. She winds up going to some type of association where people share their experiences, and maybe she thinks she's had the worst experience of the group, and she develops a glamour of importance because, boy, my experience was worse than anybody's here, so I understand more than anybody else. And so it's possible, even though that experience was negative, not her fault, maybe it leads to a glamour of self-importance. And but normally the person doesn't get much self-importance over a really negative experience like that. But the glamour of self-importance can manifest through almost any type of situation, some a lot more than others.
Aren't there negative glamours too?
Right, there's all kinds of glamours. I'll just read you a couple here of importance. Say, the glamour of destiny. A person feels that he has a special destiny that is much more important than anybody else. And see, that's a glamour because it's associated with self-importance. Boy, I have a special job to do, and maybe he's just an ordinary guy, you know. If he does have a special job to do, he will not really look on himself as being a special person. He just looks on himself as a person that's there and doing his best. The glamour of aspiration, the glamour of self-assurance, the glamour of duty, the glamour of mind and its efficiency, the glamour of personal ambition, the glamour of physical strength, the glamour of personal magnetism. So let's just pick one of those. Glamour of personal magnetism. Say a person discovers that he's able to have a strong influence on people. Like he's got a personality like Tony Robbins, and boy, people trust him. And then he begins to develop a feeling of strong self-importance. He thinks, you know, I must be special because people really trust me. And when I speak, they listen. So I must really be somebody. And see, this is the type of thinking associated with the glamour. There's illusion in there, but more, I think the core word rather than illusion is distortion. He's distorting a reality. Now, the guy does have maybe charisma. He does have ability to influence people, but he needs to not let that feed his ego. And overcoming these is really important. It's a battleground for the disciple to overcome these distortions of ego on the astral plane. And we have to overcome them before we can get to the plane of illusion and unravel the illusions. It's like getting from one place to another, from box A to box B. You can't really deal with the things in box B until you deal with the things in box A first. Can't really go into algebra 2 until you finish algebra 1. And algebra 1 is dealing with our glamours and the problems of the astral plane. And so now there's even negative glamours, like people that have a victim mentality often have a glamour about being a victim. In other words, even though in their mind being a victim kind of is difficult and a setback, they may have a glamour associated with it, and the fact that they think that they are almost special for being such a victim. And so there's specialness, and this goes along with what Joshua just said. There's negative glamours around negative things as well as positive.
Well, aren't there, I mean, glamours that don't exalt the ego in some way? Like depression or something?
No, they all exalt the ego in some way. Now you can be depressed and figure, boy, your depression's bigger than anybody else. So you almost feel special because you're so depressed. You know?
I'm so special.
And right, there's always this feeling of specialness connected with the glamour.
Or I used to be conceited, but now I'm perfect.
Yeah.
JJ, you should probably also mention group glamour. That happens a lot. You're part of a group and you help construct a sense of importance around the group, and a group can contribute to that.
Yeah, if you're in like the one true church, then you can have a glamour about being special because you're in the group and other people aren't. Or you're in a certain sorority or fraternity maybe, and other people aren't. And then the whole thought form of the group can be glamour producing. So that's a good point, Adam.
Yeah, those other groups are really prone to that. I mean, not us.
Yeah, not us. We're special. Good point, Joshua. Here's one that we see quite a bit on the internet, the glamour of the Messiah complex. And have you seen guys around thinking they're the God's chosen person to give you a message? Outside of me, of course. We know that I am, but
I avoid that kind of thing.
But but what if you happen to be get some type of true message? Can you deliver it without having a glamour about it? Is that even possible? What do you think, Edward?
I think it's possible, but I think within your soul, you know that you're not trying to. Well, it's like in one study group, it was called self-confirmatory ideation, where we try to make the personality be seen and known, and that's the kind of glamour that we're talking about, I think.
I think a really good example of this is DK himself. In his introduction, he says, I am a disciple of a certain degree.
Right.
And he doesn't, that's about all he tells us about himself. He's got an important message, but nowhere does he tell us about how important he is. He never doesn't claim to be. As a matter of fact, I remember one line he says, we are all average, are we not? So he identifies with just average people in that statement that he made. So he sets a really good example of somebody that's doing something important, yet he's not advertising the importance of it. On the other hand, it goes back to the principle of glory that we've talked about earlier. You can't really glorify yourself. If you try to glorify yourself, and that's what glamours are. Glamours are self-glorification. And when it boils down to it, you just can't glorify yourself. You just can't say, boy, I'm the greatest thing since cornflakes. You come across like you start bragging about yourself, people will just shun you. But who can you glorify? You can glorify anybody else but yourself. You say, well, my friend John here, boy, he is really good at basketball player or whatever.
Well, what if he isn't?
Well, he's still getting a good pitch from his friend, but there's no ego involved. There's no ego involved when you glorify somebody else. You may be a little bit wrong or out of kilter, but still, you put in a plug for somebody else, people will pay attention to it. But you put in a plug for yourself, people figure you're just a blowhard of some kind. And handful of people got away with it, though. Muhammad Ali got away with it because it was more of a gimmick and people kind of were amused by it. And then when he really performed, they thought, well, maybe the guy is the greatest. But he's one of the few people that ever got away with glorifying himself. But he did it in kind of a unique way.
There was something that I was taught as a teenager when reading the works of the I Am group, that whatever you say, when you say I am, that's your creative word, and that's what you become.
Yeah, you want to be real careful how you use that. Say, if you say I am sad or I am miserable, well, that's going to affect you, and you want to avoid negative things like that. Stay on the positive.
The beginning is the word.
Right, right. So the big difference between illusion and glamour is ego. The problem that Hitler had wasn't so much glamour, but it was illusion. He was under illusion that, for instance, the Jews were an inferior people, and everybody was inferior to the Germans. He had these ideas in his head that was just caused him to go completely the wrong direction. And an illusion can be dangerous. Even for a person that is sincere, he has to unravel these illusions in his mind, because some illusions are fairly harmless, others can be quite dangerous. So we need to unravel both glamour and illusion. And glamour is the difficult one. It's the one most disciples have the biggest problem with, and unraveling the distortions on the emotional plane is very difficult. If you don't believe me, just go to a political forum and bring up the name Donald Trump, and you will see all kinds of emotional distortion on display all over the place. And okay, concerning glamour, the old commentary makes this statement: let the disciple seize hold of the tail of the serpent of wisdom, and having with firmness grasp it, let him follow it into the deepest center of the hall of wisdom. Let him not be betrayed into the trap set for him by the serpent of illusion, but let him shut his eyes to the colorful tracery upon its back, and his ears to the melody of its voice. Let him discern the jewel set in the forehead of the serpent, whose tail he holds, and by its radiance traverse the miry halls of Maya. Anybody get anything out of that? Even if he didn't understand it, you got to admit it's beautiful wording. But he says, let him shut his eyes to the colorful tracery upon its back, and its ears to the melody of its voice. And this is what happens on the astral plane. Astral plane is like the sirens in Ulysses, that they have a tremendous allure to the ego. And the allure to the ego is the colorful tracery upon its back. In other words, you're going to have beautiful results if you think, if you can amplify your self-importance, and if you can listen to the music of the distortion. That's so appealing because it will prove that you are somebody, okay? And so it says you need to shut your ears and eyes to those two things. Shut your eyes to the colorful tracery upon its back, and your ears to the melody of its voice. You need to be like Ulysses and ignore the sirens, because if you follow the sirens, you will have all kinds of trouble. Let him discern the jewel set in the forehead. What would that be?
The ajna center, the third eye.
Right. In other words, lift up your consciousness to the third eye that we talked about in the last couple lessons, and there you will be able to see the true reality instead of the distorted reality. And then when you look with true vision, and by the radiance of the third eye center, and tuning into the intuition, you can traverse the halls, miry halls of Maya. So you can walk through this world where there's illusion and distortion and not be affected by it. And that's the goal. The Tibetan adds these words: nothing in heaven or hell, on the earth or elsewhere, can prevent the progress of a man who is awakened to the illusion, who has glimpsed the reality beyond the glamour of the astral plane, and who has heard, even if only once, the clarion call of his own soul. So that's interesting. Once you get the tune in, just hear the clarion call of your own soul once. He says, once you hear it once, he says, you can't forget it. So it gives you the initiative to keep going until you're able to conquer the astral plane. Because once you hear the time or times that you have heard the voice of your own soul, you saw through the mist of the astral plane, even if for a moment. It's like being in a very cloudy or foggy situation, driving in the fog, and all of a sudden you reach a patch where there's no fog and you see clearly. This is the point where you hear the clarion call of your own soul. And when you reach a point where you see that true vision is possible, then you don't forget, you remember that, and you keep moving forward no matter what. In most cases, there's a handful that take the dark path, but most people will continue moving forward. The astral plane is also called Kurukshetra, both humanity as a whole and of the individual human unit. Anybody know what the Kurukshetra is? It's from the Bhagavad Gita, where it's a battleground that Arjuna had to fight with. And so the battleground for humanity is the astral plane. And in the Gita, it talks about the great battles that Arjuna had to fight, and this is called the Kurukshetra. And this is the astral plane. It's the battleground of the soul, the place of victory or the place of defeat. It is the Kurukshetra upon which the great choice is made. It is a battleground whereon must be found the Waterloo of every aspirant. In some life, there comes an emotional crisis where decisive action is taken and the disciple proves control of his emotional nature. So in some life, you're going to have some great crisis of an emotional nature. It may be something devastating. It may be the death of somebody very close to you. It could be a devastating loss of everything you have. It could be the loss of the love of your life. And you're completely devastated and you begin to look with new eyes. And this is something that happens to everybody eventually, so they begin to look with new eyes upon the astral plane and wonder, am I seeing and feeling things correctly? And so the person begins to ask more questions because of some emotional crisis. How many people have had a strong emotional crisis in their current life?
I've had many.
I bet everybody's had at least one or two, right? Anybody not had an emotional crisis in their life?
I have many.
Yeah. Well, I bet Asaf's never had an emotional crisis, right, Asaf? You're just even keel, happy all the time, right? Yes or no?
No.
Well, even Asaf has had problems.
He's too relaxed and happy to bother with saying anything right now.
How about you, Adam? Have you had some type of emotional crisis in your life?
You can probably ask my wife, and she'll tell you about a few of them.
Okay. Yeah, all of us has had probably about all that we can handle, but apparently he says in one life there's going to be just a really big one. So I'd imagine a number of people here have had some pretty big ones. So how about you, Adam? As you think back to emotional crisis you had, did it cause a change in your thinking?
Yeah, it was November 17th, 2003.
Wow, you remember the actual date, huh?
Yeah, it was a pretty big event. But from there, I had to change course, start looking different direction, and eventually led me to some of your teachings, which completely caused me to think differently about life and change how I viewed my current existence. So that was a pretty big one.
Yeah, well, that's a good story. Sounds like that might be one of the things the Tibetan is talking about here, because it produced an actual change for you. And sometimes, as we're progressing along until we become some type of master avatar or of some kind, powerful emotional stimulus can cause change like nothing else. I know there's several times in my life that I've had powerful emotional stimulus that made me think to myself, I have to start thinking differently here. And so this is no matter where you are on the path, you're going to the strong emotional stimulation will have an effect on you. And it can, no matter what happens to us, we can use it for positive or negative. We can use it to just become bitter, or we can use it to change our life and make improvements. So nothing is set in stone. Okay, he says, some powerful point of tension forces an aspirant to use the mind to obtain victory over the astral. In other words, what happens is when you have an emotional crisis, don't solve it with the emotions alone. Raise yourself up to the plane of the mind and say, now let me look at this situation. Okay, love of my life just says that she doesn't want me anymore, and she's leaving for this rich guy who's going to take care of her like I can't, and I'm devastated. Okay, rather than just solve it with the emotions, look at it through the mind, saying, well, okay, I probably need to make some changes somewhere. Where am I going to go now? And so start thinking mentally about what you're going to do. This is a key situation. It says for humanity as a whole also has this battleground, the Kurukshetra. And he says for humanity as a whole, it was World War I and II is the one great war, he calls it. He lumps World War I and II together. But the climax was World War II, and that was a great battleground for humanity. And it gave us a big move forward away from the astral plane. Sometimes I think we're going backwards now. We move forward after World War II, and now we reached a plateau, and now we're starting to go backward again. So we need another push to move us forward. Hopefully it's not going to be World War III. We must obtain the dominance of mind over the emotion. He says the only question is, for once person that's heard that clarion call of his own soul, there's only one question, is time. Is he going to move ahead forward quickly or slowly? Is he going to go ahead with determination to really make progress, or just kind of lackadaisically move forward? So he needs to, the wise disciple, once he reaches a point where he solves some of his problems, he needs to make a decision to move forward as quickly as possible at that point. And oftentimes what will happen, will be the the seeker moves ahead very slowly over many lifetimes, and then he reaches this point of tension. And then if he absorbs it correctly and begins to see correctly, he'll move forward like on a parabolic curve. He'll move forward very quickly. But if he makes the right decisions. If he doesn't, then he'll just continue to glide forward slowly until another crisis appears. He says this, it's however a question of a slow, rapid realization and liberation from the great world illusion, and to this end every aspirant is begged to work strenuously and to lend his aid. The astral plane, he says, is that whereupon the pairs of opposites act and interact and will pull, wherein the pull of the great dualities is most potently felt. Primarily, the interaction is between the soul and its vehicle, but there are many other lesser dualities in play. What are the lesser dualities? The duality is the soul and the lower personality. And the astral plane is a plane whereon the dualities are felt and measured. And to overcome the astral plane, the disciple must see the various dualities and balance them off. So, in addition to the duality of the soul and personality, what are some other dualities you can think of?
Should I go or should I stay?
Right. Yeah, that's a duality. Shall I move ahead or just stay still or go backwards? Okay, what's another duality? What's the opposite of light?
Well, there's light and dark, there's day and night, rich and poor.
Right. Hot and cold, pleasure, pain, good and evil, poverty and riches. All these dualities must be balanced off. He makes an interesting phrase. He calls this the astral zone, where all these dualities are that we have to look at and measure. He calls it the playground of the gods. I found that an interesting phrase that he didn't elaborate on at all. Why would the astral zone be called the playground of the gods?
Well, the gods are probably the things that we make as gods, like the god of money, the god of pleasure.
Okay, that's good. Now, Joshua, you're a game player, right?
You could say that.
Have you ever played a virtual reality game?
You mean like with the glasses?
Yeah.
I played that Nintendo, what was it, Nintendo Virtual Boy back in the day, so not any modern ones, but an old-timey one, yeah.
Okay, now when you're playing a game, is that game real or illusion?
I guess it's real. I guess the illusion is in if you start thinking it's something that it's not, right?
Yeah, well, actually, but if you kill somebody in a game, you don't really kill them, right? You didn't really kill anybody, so illusion, right?
That's what I'm going by. That's my story.
So, the illusion of a virtual world that we can create as humans is the playground of humans. So let's use a law of correspondences.
Oh, wow.
Use a law of correspondences. What is the playground of the gods?
So that this is sort of a constructed thing of the higher entities where they play, so to speak.
Right, right. So in other words, we have the illusion of a game, a video game, is caused by the mind and the electricity intermingling with thought, creating an illusion. The astral zone is created by the mind and the electrical currents of the etheric body. Similar type thing. We have a correspondence on a higher level, and it produces all kinds of situations that lead to all kinds of experience. And one of the cravings of all life is what? That I've taught many times?
Experience.
Experience. All life craves experience. We crave it so bad that even when we go to sleep, we do what?
We
Dream.
dream.
We dream. We still have experience. We go to sleep to get some rest. We're still experiencing. We have really crazy experiences in our dreams. And the dreams are kind of playgrounds for the personality. The astral zone is a playground for the gods. They've allowed its creation so we can play. We can play and learn from our play and hone our skills through our play. So I found that phrase very interesting. Astral sphere is the playground of the gods. Okay, we'll end it at that. We'll continue next week on this class. But it's an interesting rule to think of. And this is overcoming the glamours and distortions of the emotional astral world is extremely difficult. And many people who think they have overcome it haven't overcome it at all. And a lot of people that seem really calm all the time are seething below the surface and are just holding their emotions in rather than mastering their emotions. So finding a person that is really in control of the emotional world is rare, but it's a great accomplishment for a disciple to be able to do that. Edward, you look like a pretty unruffled guy. Do you ever get mad at anything?
Well, there have been occasions, but it isn't really too extreme.
Yeah, you look like pretty even-keeled type of guy that is probably hard to ruffle. Now, if somebody like insults you or insulted your best friend, how would you react?
Well, I try to defend it with the truth.
Yeah, right. Do you call them names or anything?
Well, there have been rare occasions with an ex-wife.
Yeah, that's probably that's probably the big test. If somebody really comes and insults you or insults somebody close to you, that's a real test as to handling the emotions correctly. But most of the people, I think about everybody here has made a lot of progress in the astral zone. All of you good, decent people that are pretty hard to ruffle. And I'm not going to say you're perfect, but you are a group I'm happy to be associated with.
Like I said, I used to be conceited, but now I'm perfect.
Yeah, right. Okay, we'll end with the meditation. We'll say the great invocation. Follow me in saying the Oms to prepare. And as we say the Oms, visualize the power of the Om driving out, speaking of the astral and emotional body. One thing it does, it drives out all the negative vibrations from the astral body. So it allows you to put your mind in a higher state than it would be otherwise. So it's to lift us up a little bit. So concentrate on the power of the Om driving out all negativity, so only positive energy remains. Visualize feeling everybody in the group saying it together, even though your mics are on mute, so we can't hear you, but visualize hearing from the inner ear. Om. Now visualize us all in a circle, interlocking arms around each other. Om, 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 om. From the point of light within the mind of God, let light stream forth into the minds of men. Let light descend on earth. Visualize this point of light within the mind of God, streaming forth, not just moseying along, but streaming. Engulfing the whole planet and everyone who is willing to receive. From the point of love within the heart of God, let love stream forth into the hearts of men. May Christ return to earth. It's desirable that when Christ returns, he finds love in the hearts of many people. Visualize this love falling upon the hearts of men. From the center where the will of God is known, let purpose guide the little wills of men, the purpose which the masters know and serve. There's a will higher than our will. There's a plan that needs to be fulfilled. Let the disciples have faith that the plan is rolling forth and the will of God will happen on earth as it is in heaven. From the center which we call the race of men, let the plan of love and light work out, and may it seal the door where evil dwells. The door where evil dwells is the door that opens to slavery of the human spirit. Visualize this door being shut and sealed by the light and love and power of God. Let light and love and power restore the plan on earth. Om, 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 om. Om. Now take a moment of silence, visualize what we've just said, and see light and love and power manifesting on the earth. Feel it go through you and every other person here and every person on the planet being affected. For a moment of silence, feel the circulation. Say the last line one more time. Let light and love and power restore the plan on earth. Okay, good group today. Any comments or questions before we call it an end?
Well, in the nature of the soul.
I've got one question.
Just, I think Ed was first. Let him go.
I've got a question.
Oh, okay. Go
Who's,
ahead.
go ahead, speak.
Go ahead, Ed.
I was curious.
Okay. Stacy, go ahead.
All right, I was curious is what's the significance of Madi Padme Om? As just opposed to or Om. Alice Bailey brought that up. It's supposed to be a pretty big significance.
It's an ancient mantra that's I think millions of years old. That is I can't remember the actual meaning. Does anybody know the translation of the phrase?
I believe it's compassion.
And it means the jewel in the lotus.
Yeah. But anyway, it's a very ancient phrase. If you say that over several times and feel the vibration from it and see what it does for you. I haven't used it much myself.
Yeah.
I just concentrate on sounds more than particular phrases.
I have a recording of that from years ago, of chanting.
Oh, yeah? Okay.
Anyway, I was going to say that we have to remember we're all in a state of becoming. That's something that's emphasized in the nature of the soul teachings. We're all either higher or lower than someone else in our becoming. So we can't make comparisons or criticism.
Yeah, right. Like Jesus says, take the beam out of your own eye before you take the small sliver out of somebody else's. And so all of us, no matter where we are, if we're in the light, we will approach our next step with humility, because there's always somebody greater than us up the line, for one thing. That if we lose our humility, we'll see that we are not as great as we think we are. So the humility is extremely important. Okay, any other comments or questions? We will sign off for now. So good group today, and appreciate you being here.
Take care, everybody. Light and love.
Thanks,
JJ. See everybody.
Thanks, everybody. Okay.